Jordan Peterson, in his most recent debate, Christian versus 20 atheists. Let me correct that. I mean, Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists. Jordan may have accidentally let slip that he actually doesn't believe in God. And in fact, he might be closer to the atheists he debates than he realizes. In this debate, Jordan refuses to take a stance on his own religious identification, refusing to answer the question, are you a Christian?
You're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Very interesting, Jordan. Also in this debate, Jordan Peterson, ever cautious with his words and definitions, gives us lowly mortals the definition of belief as he understands it.
If you believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
You live for it, and you die for it. That's what I mean by that. It isn't something that you say. It isn't something that's associated with logical consistency. It's not declarative. It's not propositional. It's not a figment of your imagination. It's the presupposition of your attention and your action. And you're either fragmented, in which case you worship multiple gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force.
Thanks, Jordan. Now, as silly and maximalist as this sounds, it's maybe not such a bad definition of belief. Now, when I heard his definition of his belief, and I thought about his difficulty in coming to terms with his own religious identity, I became a little confused. And so I did what I thought Jordan Peterson would do.
Well, I thought about it a lot,
And I thought, wow, that's an interesting combination of thoughts and ideas to have in a debate about religion.
You ask intelligent questions.
Thank you, Jordan. And as I'm so smart, I'll posit an argument for you. Premises 1. A Christian can be defined as anyone who sincerely affirms the God of the Bible and Jesus as the Messiah and structures their life around those doctrines. Premises 2. If you sincerely hold the biblical doctrine about God and Jesus, then you meet the definition of Christian. Conversely, denying Christian identity while affirming those doctrines is inconsistent. Premises 3. Someone who isn't sure they are Christian leaves room for doubt of the precepts of the Christian faith. Premises 4. Jordan refuses to openly claim a Christian identity. Conclusion. Therefore, Peterson must either A. give up the doctrine he affirms, or B. admit he is a Christian. His refusal to do either shows he doubts those doctrines. Interesting.
Don't be a smartass.
Let's add a second argument into the mix. Premises 1. What's the definition of belief again, Jordan?
If you believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
You live for it, and you die for it.
Premises 2. Jordan Peterson, as identified in my previous argument, doubts his religious identity, and therefore the God of the Bible himself. Premises 3. If you doubt a religious doctrine, it's something you are not willing to stake your life on. Premises 4. If you are not willing to stake your life on it, you don't believe it. Conclusion. Jordan Peterson doubts the Christian religious doctrine, therefore is not likely to be willing to stake his life on it. So, it follows that Jordan Peterson doesn't believe in God.
Sure.
Don't put words in my mouth.
I'm sorry, Jordan. I think this logic is sound by JP's own standards. The only points I believe he could contend against is that, can you deny something you truly believe? But I would argue, if you can deny something you truly believe, you can also not be willing to die for it or stake your life on it. So really, he must change his definition of belief to get out of this. Or else argue that you can deny something but still be willing to die for it. However, if he argues that he believes he is willing to die for his belief in God, and by extension, identity as a Christian, that means he isn't willing to deny the existence of God and his identity as a Christian. So, he should be willing to make a definitive statement on the existence of God and his Christian identity. Now, the other argument would be, I can believe in the Christian precepts, but not be Christian. I would argue then, what does it mean to be Christian? If someone who believes in the God of the Bible can be identified as something other than Christian, then what must one do to be a Christian?
Willingness to shoulder your cross voluntarily and trudge uphill regardless of circumstances.
Well, that's all well and good, JP. But that's not really an actionable insight, is it? Unless you literally want me to get a cross and drag it up a hill. If I wanted to be generous, I would try to translate...
Sure.
Don't put words in my mouth.
You're not my God, Jordan. You can't stop me. I would try translating his nonsense statement to be, your belief is proven by your actions. The problem we run into now is what actions are considered Christian. And does intent matter in following these rules? What if I follow them by accident? Does that make me a Christian? Jordan, thankfully, is here to help us through these troubling times.
There were moral actors outside the Christian domain.
Right.
They're
so is that
addressing
person
the
Christian,
same-
though? Is that person Christian?
Well, to some degree, again, that's a matter of definition, because
Exactly.
they wouldn't be proclaiming Christian propositions, but they're acting out the pattern.
Of
Right? So,
Christianity.
yeah, so you imagine that full Christianity would involve a dozen things. And you can imagine someone who knows nothing of Christianity, say, acting out 8 of them.
Right.
Right.
So
then they'd be 8/12ths Christian or something like
8/12
that.
Christian.
Well,
but to be like a full Christian, how can someone say I am Christian? Like I am Christian, not 8/12, but Christian.
well,
don't understand.
I hesitate to do that personally, because
Okay.
I think it's the kind of goal that you be very careful about proclaiming. The technical.
But belief is not necessarily, to be mostly Christian, belief is not necessary. 8/12s or, right?
Well, it depends on what you mean by belief. See, because I would say that acting out the pattern is the deepest form of belief. Now, you could add to that what you say. So, maybe in the optimal situation, how you act
And how you say
and what you imagine and what you say, they're the same,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you can imagine a hypocrite who says all sorts of wonderful things and does nothing, and you could imagine another person who acts in a very positive manner but proclaims nothing.
Premises 1. Some actions are inherently Christian. Premises 2. Your Christian identity is based on taking those actions. Premises 3. If you take an action that is congruent with the Christian rules, you are, at least in part, Christian. Premises 4. If your actions follow all the rules, you are 100% Christian. Premises 5. Knowledge of taking the action is irrelevant to your commitment to the religion. Conclusion. Anyone who acts on the Christian actions are at some degree a Christian. The entire argument depends on taking for granted that certain actions are inherently Christian. So much so that performing them, even unknowingly, automatically proves your Christian virtue. But nothing in the reasoning shows why Christianity has a monopoly on these behaviors. If you swap out Christian for Islamic, Buddhist, or even atheist, the logical form stays the same. So why does Jordan believe that some actions are inherently Christian? Well, this comes down to the final claim of interest that I'll cover,
Well, the
I'm
Mona
defining
Lisa.
God as conscience.
and that is JP's claim that God is conscience.
I'm not defining it. Elijah
Okay,
defined
so
it.
as a
Oh, sorry. I mean Elijah's definition.
My definition of God as conscience.
Oh, okay. No. Jordan's definition.
you're
You
being,
accept conscience as a guide, and conscience is one of the defining characteristics of God in the Old
I
Testament.
think you're being
Premises 1. God is conscience. Premises 2. We have conscience. Conclusion. God is real. This wouldn't be a JP argument if there wasn't a logical fallacy. In this case, it's begging the question, or the tail wagging the dog. By defining God to be conscience, you've essentially set the conclusion up as true by definition. You decide God equals X, for some X you already admit exists, then triumphantly declare God exists. The next problem is we need to explore the premises. The problem is, JP has already made an assertion of conscience without justification. We need to prove we have conscience, and then we need to prove that God is conscience before the premises can be accepted. Finally, if God was conscience, we would expect a degree of uniformity in our morality. Premises 1. If the biblical God is real, he is singular, not a pantheon of gods. Premises 2. If a single God is evidenced in all our conscience, we would expect uniformity in our conscience. Premises 3. Humans have a wide variety of conscience and moral beliefs. This is evidenced by the debates of morality and our different visions for the future. Conclusion, therefore, God isn't conscience. Thanks all for watching. Remember to give the video a like and a subscribe. If you feel my arguments in this video were weak, or if I missed anything, leave me a comment.